The text message that officially made me an orphan arrived at 9:03 a.m., precisely 2 minutes after my monthly $400 or $500 family support payment cleared their account. I was sitting in my silent kitchen, staring at the garden Robert and I had planted together, when my phone vibrated against the cool granite. The message was from my only daughter, Charlotte. Mom, we've decided to have a quiet Thanksgiving this year, immediate family only. We all need one holiday without tension and drama. I read the words once, then twice. My fingers, tracing the rim of my coffee mug, began to tremble. Immediate family only. I was her mother. I was the 69-year-old woman who had financed her entire adult life. From the $200,000 down payment on her sprawling Tampa home, a payment that legally made me a 60% equity owner, to the private school tuition for her 2 children. I was the grieving widow who, for the past 9 agonizing months since Robert's passing, had filled the gaping hole in my life by funding every real and manufactured crisis she had. How was I not immediate family? My gaze drifted to the framed photo on the counter. Robert and I on our 45th anniversary. His arm wrapped tightly around me. He had always been wary of Charlotte's and her husband Mark's casual entitlement. "Be careful, Ellie," he'd warned gently, signing the papers for their house. "Generosity is a gift, not an obligation. Don't let them confuse the two." I had dismissed his concerns, believing that a mother's love was boundless, that my support was the glue holding them together during his illness and after his death. Now, I saw the truth. I wasn't the glue. I was the bank. A bank whose services were required, but whose presence was a nuisance. The tension and drama she mentioned was my grief. It was the moments I'd let my guard down and spoken of how empty the house felt without Robert's booming laugh, or how I sometimes still set his place at the table out of habit. My sorrow had become an inconvenience, a social faux pas at the dinner table I paid for, in the house I largely owned. The disrespect had been building for months, like a slow poison, last month, when I'd mentioned how proud Robert would have been of my grandson Alex's place on the debate team. Mark had sighed dramatically. "Charlotte, can we please try to look forward? It's not healthy to keep dwelling on the past." I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck as Alex didn't even look up from his phone. My stories of their grandfather, the man whose insurance payout was funding their comfortable life, were now considered dwelling. I was an ATM with inconvenient feelings, and my scheduled withdrawal for Thanksgiving had just been declined. That Saturday, the day I should have been planning what dish to bring to my daughter's Thanksgiving dinner, was the loneliest I had endured since Robert's funeral. The house felt cavernous, each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall a reminder of the passing, empty minutes, desperate for a distraction. I began tidying the living room, plumping cushions and dusting surfaces I had just cleaned the day before. On the side table, tucked behind a stack of magazines, was Charlotte's iPad. She'd left it here 3 weeks ago, complaining it wouldn't hold a charge, and had borrowed one of my old ones. I had taken it to the Apple store for her, and it had been sitting there, repaired and forgotten, ever since I picked it up. Noting the battery was nearly depleted again, my first instinct, a mother's instinct, was to plug it in so it would be ready for her whenever she remembered it. As I connected the charging cable, the screen flickered to life, and on the lock screen, a notification banner appeared. It was from a group chat named the A-Team. The preview text made my blood run cold. It was from Mark, re Eleanor's Thanksgiving drama, Good Riddance. My heart hammered against my ribs. I should have turned it off. I should have walked away and respected their privacy, a boundary they had never afforded me. But seeing my own name, a subject line for their private ridicule, was a violation that demanded investigation. My hands shaking, I pressed my thumb to the home button. Charlotte had never bothered to remove my fingerprint from her device's security settings. The iPad unlocked. The group chat was open on the screen, a digital tribunal where my fate had been casually decided. The conversation had taken place the previous afternoon. Charlotte had kicked it off. Thank God she's not coming. I can't take another holiday listening to her performance grief. We can finally relax. Performance grief. The two words struck me with the force of a physical blow. Was that what she thought? That my tears for my husband of 45 years were a theatrical production for her benefit? Mark's reply was next, posted just minutes after my monthly payment notification would have hit his phone. Did the transfer clear good? At least the sentimental old wallet is still functional. Now we can afford that new grill for the patio. A wallet. That's all I was. Not a mother, not a grandmother, but a wallet that had the audacity to feel sad. Then came the children, my beautiful grandchildren, whose every opportunity I had so proudly funded. Maya, my 16-year-old granddaughter, had replied with a series of emojis followed by, "Does this mean we still get Thanksgiving money? I need those Lululemon leggings everyone has." No concern for her grieving grandmother. No thought of my loneliness. Only a cold, transactional anxiety about her allowance. Her brother Alex, 17. The boy I'd taught to read was even crueler. It's so awkward when she tries to talk about Grandpa. Like, we get it. He's gone. Move on. Move on. The words echoed in the silent room. They wanted me to neatly package my love and loss, to store it away where it wouldn't interfere with their comfort or their shopping lists. The final message was from Charlotte, a response to Mark about the new grill. "Perfect. We can christen it on Thanksgiving. Consider it payment for putting up with her all year." I sank into Robert's worn leather armchair, the iPad falling from my numb fingers onto the rug. There was no misunderstanding, no reading between the lines. It was all there, in stark, digital black and white. They celebrated my exclusion. They resented my grief. They saw my generosity not as a gift, but as a payment they were owed for the burden of my existence. The tears I expected to come never arrived. The deep, aching sorrow that had been my constant companion for 9 months was cauterized by a sudden, white-hot rage. I wasn't just a grieving widow anymore. I was Eleanor Vance, the woman who had managed a staff of 80 and a student body of 200 for 35 years. The principal who never tolerated disrespect from anyone. My family had forgotten who I was. I was about to remind them. I spent Sunday not in sorrow, but in strategy. I pulled out the heavy file box from Robert's office, the one marked Household and Legal. My husband had been a meticulous engineer, a man who believed in blueprints and legal frameworks, with steady hands. I retrieved the folder for the Tampa house. There it was, clipped to the front, the equity co-ownership agreement, drafted by our estate lawyer, James Chen. Robert had insisted on it. "It's not about trust, Ellie," he'd said. "It's about clarity." The document clearly stated that my $200,000 down payment constituted a 60% ownership stake in the property, giving me specific rights should they ever default on their 40% of the financial obligations. I felt a surge of gratitude for his foresight. He hadn't just left me money, he had left me armor. Monday morning, at 9:00 a.m. sharp, I called James. I didn't cry or rage. In a calm, measured voice I had once used to address the entire school board. I laid out the situation, the emotional blackmail, the financial drain, and the final, damning evidence from the group chat. "James," I said, my voice firm, "I need to understand my legal position. Not as a mother, but as an investor in my daughter's life who is getting a very poor return." There was a brief silence on the other end. Then James spoke, his voice tinged with admiration. "Of course, Eleanor. Let's be very clear. The monthly transfers are legally considered gifts. You can cease them at any time, for any reason, with zero legal repercussions. As for the house, the agreement Robert had me draw up is ironclad. If they fail to meet their mortgage obligations, As the majority equity holder, you have several options, up to and including forcing a sale to protect your investment. The word investment hung in the air, clean and clarifying. It stripped away all the messy, guilt-laden emotions and left only the cold, hard numbers. I had been treating a business arrangement like a family favor, and they had been exploiting it. After thanking James, I opened my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard with a purpose I hadn't felt in months. I logged into my online banking portal, navigated to the automatic payments section, and found the recurring monthly transfer of $4,500 to Charlotte and Mark Beck. For a moment, I saw their faces, my daughters, my grandchildren's, a pang of something guilt, habit, a mother's ingrained duty tightened in my chest. Then, I pictured the words on the iPad screen: performance grief, sentimental old wallet. My finger moved to the mouse and I clicked cancel this transfer. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to permanently delete this scheduled payment? I clicked confirm. A small green banner appeared at the top of the screen. Your automatic transfer has been successfully canceled. It was the most liberating sentence I had read in years. I wasn't finished. I drafted a concise email to James. Please begin the 30-day notice process to have my name and financial backing removed from all loans and credit accounts for which I am a guarantor for Charlotte and Mark Beck. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. My third and final call was the one that felt the most like an act of a principle restoring order. I dialed the number for Westfield Academy's finance department. Good morning, I said to the woman who answered. My name is Eleanor Vance. I've been covering the tuition for my grandchildren, Alex and Maya Beck. I'm calling to inform you that effective immediately, I will no longer be responsible for these payments. All future billing and correspondence should be directed to their parents, Charlotte and Mark Beck. The woman was taken aback. Oh, I see. Mrs. Vance, we will certainly update our records. The winter semester payment is due next week. I'm aware, I replied calmly. That will be their responsibility to manage. I hung up the phone and a deep, shuddering breath escaped my lungs. The invisible chains of obligation I had wrapped around myself were finally broken. That evening, I sat in Robert's armchair, not with the iPad, but with a travel brochure. It was for the Rhine River cruise we had bookmarked for our retirement, castles and vineyards, history and music. We had dreamed of it for years. Now, the dream was solely mine. I picked up the phone and booked the 2-week trip for the following October. It cost $7,000 less than 2 months of the support payments I had just canceled. This money wouldn't be spent on designer leggings or patio grills. It would be spent on me, on my life. They had wanted a Thanksgiving without my drama. I was about to give them a lifetime without my financial support. For a week, there was only silence, a blissful, uninterrupted quiet that allowed me to read an entire novel in 2 days and spend an afternoon planning my cruise itinerary. I knew, however, that I had not dismantled their financial reality. I had merely pulled the pin on a grenade. The explosion came the following Tuesday. It wasn't Charlotte who called first. It was a man with a clipped, authoritative voice who introduced himself as Dr. Alistair Finch, the headmaster of Westfield Academy. Mrs. Vance, I'm calling about the outstanding winter tuition for Alex and Maya Beck. Our finance department informed me you've been the guarantor, but they received a rather abrupt call from you last week. We've left messages for the Becks, but have received no response, and the payment is now 5 days overdue. His tone was accusatory. As if I were a delinquent student myself, I kept my voice perfectly level. Dr. Finch, as I informed your finance department, I am no longer financially responsible for my grandchildren's education. Their parents, Charlotte and Mark Beck, are the ones you need to speak with. Be that as it may, he huffed. If the $10,000 balance isn't settled by the end of this week, The children will be suspended from classes and their transcripts frozen. That is a matter for you to discuss with their parents, I said, and calmly ended the call. 2 hours later, my phone rang again. It was Charlotte. Her voice was a high-pitched shriek of panic and humiliation. Mom. Oh my God, you have to help me. I'm at Whole Foods. The entire cart is full. And all my cards were just declined, every single one of them. There must be some mistake with the bank. There's no mistake, Charlotte, I said, the words cool and clear. What are you talking about? My credit card payment is supposed to come from the account automatically, an account that is no longer being supplemented by me, I informed her. Your credit limit now reflects what you and Mark actually earn. I suggest you put back the organic kale and artisanal cheeses. The line went completely silent. I could hear the beeping of the checkout scanner in the background, a metronome counting down the seconds of her dawning horror. You cut me off, she whispered, her voice cracking. What did you do? I read your group chat. Charlotte, the one on the iPad you forgot. The silence that followed was heavier, colder, thick with guilt and shame. When she finally spoke, her voice was a choked whisper. Mom, we were just blowing off steam. You can't do this. Oh, I can, I replied. You wanted a Thanksgiving without drama. I'm giving you a life without my financial support. It seems only fair. Mark called 30 minutes after that, his voice a low growl. Eleanor, you fix this right now. Charlotte is hysterical. What the hell did you do to our accounts? It's about respect, Mark, a concept you might want to look up after you're done researching patio grills. Don't you get smart with me, he snarled. You can't just abandon your family because your feelings got hurt. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm simply allowing my family to be the immediate, self-sufficient unit they so desire to be. I am giving your A-team the space it so desperately needs. You are now free from the burden of my performance grief. Quoting their own words back to them was exquisitely satisfying. He was sputtering now, a torrent of threats and curses. I let him vent, then calmly said, Your financial arrangements are now entirely your own concern. I suggest you and Charlotte start working on a budget. I hung up before he could respond. The dominoes fell quickly after that. A week later, they received a certified letter from the bank, a result of my instructions to James, informing them that their primary guarantor had been removed and their credit limits had been drastically reduced across all accounts. Their car loan, which I had co-signed, was now under review. Westfield Academy made good on its threat. Alex and Maya were sent home with a letter stating they were not to return until the account was paid in full. The private school drama became public humiliation, and the life they had taken for granted was collapsing around them, all because the sentimental old wallet had finally closed. 2 months after my financial secession, the final, inevitable crisis arrived. James called me. Eleanor, they've missed their second mortgage payment. The bank has issued a notice of default, as per your agreement. You have the right to force an immediate sale of the property to recover your investment. I felt a surprising calm. It was the logical end to a failed investment. Please proceed, James, I said. That evening, Charlotte appeared on my doorstep. She looked haggard, with dark circles under her eyes and a desperation that seemed to cling to her like a shroud. Mom, please, she began, her voice hoarse. Don't do this. Don't take our house. We'll lose everything. I let her in, but remained standing in the foyer, a clear signal that this was not a social call. I'm not taking your house, Charlotte, I corrected her gently. I am exercising my legal rights as the 60% owner of a house that you have failed to make payments on. There's a critical difference. She started to cry, the desperate, pleading tears of someone who had lost all control. We're sorry. Okay, we're so sorry. We'll do anything. We'll include you in everything. We'll have dinner every Sunday. I don't want forced apologies or obligatory invitations, Charlotte. I want authentic respect. I spent the last year of my life being tolerated. I've spent the last 2 months discovering what it feels like to be appreciated. I told her about the literacy program I'd started volunteering for, helping adults learn to read. They see me as a teacher, a mentor. They don't see me as a burden or drama. Family is how people treat you, not a biological technicality. And right now, the volunteers at the public library treat me with more kindness than my own daughter has in years. She left that day with nothing but the hard, cold truth. 3 months later, the house was sold. After the remaining mortgage was settled, they received their 40% of the proceeds, enough for a security deposit on a small rental apartment in a less desirable school district. Mark had to take a second job delivering groceries in the evenings. Charlotte, for the first time in 15 years, got a full-time job in retail. Alex and Maya, no longer in the cosseted world of private school, had to get after-school jobs to pay for their own clothes and entertainment. That October, as they were moving into their cramped apartment, I was standing on the deck of a riverboat, a glass of Riesling in my hand, watching the ancient castles of the Rhine Valley drift by. I made friends on that cruise, people who were fascinated by my stories as a principal and who invited me to join their travel club for a trip to Ireland the following spring. I scattered some of Robert's ashes at a beautiful point overlooking the river, and for the first time since he died, I felt a profound sense of peace. I'm 71 now, and my life is fuller than it has ever been. When I rewrote my will, I didn't disinherit Charlotte, but I did redirect the bulk of my estate. I established the Robert Vance Memorial Scholarship, a fund for underprivileged students who showed academic promise. My money would now build futures for children who valued opportunity, not fund a lifestyle for those who took it for granted. The final surprise came on my birthday last year. I received a simple card from Charlotte. There was no request for money, no hint of manipulation. Inside, she had written a short note. Mom, I was promoted to department manager at the store. It's been the hardest year of my life, but for the first time, I feel proud of myself. Thank you for teaching me what it means to stand on my own. It wasn't a perfect apology, and it didn't magically heal our fractured relationship, but it was an acknowledgement. It was growth, born from harsh but necessary consequences. I had spent so many years believing that being needed was the same as being loved. I've learned now that true value comes from being wanted for your wisdom, your company, your friendship. My family wanted my money, but they didn't want me. So I gave my money a new purpose, and in doing so, I found a new life for myself. Has your kindness ever been mistaken for an obligation? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with the people you love to teach them and yourself? A lesson in respect. Share your story in the comments below. I've learned that sharing our experiences is how we find our strength. If my journey resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your power.